Today I'm going to show you guys how to spice up your product photos using balloons. The original idea for this photo shoot was actually the bubblegum flavor. However, it didn't really turn out well with the pink balloons, and I don't have purple balloons, so we just went with the pink. However, I still might use the bubblegum flavor to take some photos and maybe do some photoshopping later on to make all the balloons purple. I'm not sure yet, but we'll see. You'll see if it's at the end of this video. So let's continue. The setup is pretty straightforward. All you need is some balloons and some toothpaste. You do need some variation in height of the balloons. You want some large ones and you want some small ones. Otherwise, we would see the white background. Speaking of the white background, I'm using a sheet of white paper, which is holding onto the wall with some blue tack. As you can see, I'm using this large perspex to create a big tabletop. But you guys can use anything for the tabletop as long as you have a big enough surface to hold your setup. As for my light, I'm using the Godox SK400 II with a rectangular softbox. To have my light go overhead of my setup, I am using a C-stand to hold my light. Now this C-stand has a boom arm, which is allowing it to hang overhead and point directly downwards onto my setup. Now, I am not using a sandbag. I do not recommend not using a sandbag, so ensure that you have a sandbag. I can't find mine, so I need to find that, but if I had it, I'd be using it. So make sure you use a sandbag. For my light power, it is set to 1/4, but it may vary depending on your lighting setup and how high or low you're hanging your light. So use this as a guide and go from there. I'm using a 16 to 35mm lens. The focal length that I'm using for this zoom lens is 35mm. You can use anything below that if you like, or a little bit above that. So if you don't have 35 or below, you can try 50mm if you have that. Let me know how you go. My camera settings are 1/200th, f/18, and ISO 100. Now let's talk about the balloons. To keep them close together and not just fall off the table, I've used jars. You can use anything. Jars work well because it's glass, it's kind of see-through, it's not going to really reflect back onto my products, although some of the jars do have things in them. But as you can see with these jars, they're kind of half filled or some of the back ones are empty. So use things that aren't going to reflect color back onto your balloons or product. So either white or glass, where is the best way to go. So if you can be more clever, then go for it. Could even use tape. I think that could potentially work. Tape them all together, but just be creative and see how you go. Now it is time to take your photos. Grab your camera, experiment, go from high to low, left to right, and just have fun with it, okay? Don't be too stuck in this mindset of it needs to look good on the first go. It's probably gonna look on the first go, if I'm being completely honest. But be willing to explore and see what happens. Remember, you're here to learn. Send them to me on Jacob Manfred on Instagram. I'd love to see them. But then once you have your photo, it's time to edit. To begin, select the photo that you are ready to edit. Adjust the highlights and the levels. Then right-click the photo and select Edit in Photoshop. You can also do this in Lightroom. Once you're in Photoshop, ensure that you always duplicate the layer before making any adjustments and call it Patch. Now, I want to quickly remove all the specks and dots on this image. To do this, go up to Filter, Noise, Dust and Scratches. Adjust the radius and threshold until it removes the black dots from your image. So now we have a blurry image. What I want you to do is apply a mask. Ensure you're on the patch layer and select the mask icon. Next, we need to fill this layer mask with black. Select the brush tool, right-click to adjust your brush size and hardness, and now brush in with white on the areas you want to fix. You can even apply an inverted layer to help you see where all the imperfections are. Just make sure you reselect the layer mask when you go to brush over the image. When you think you have removed all the specks and dots, just toggle off the inverted layer mask. Now that I'm happy with the final image, it's time to make it pop. I'm going to use my custom Photoshop Action filter. This is the filter that I use on all my photos. By purchasing this filter, you also support me as a content creator to create more content just like this. So thank you. Now all you have to do is hit save and export the image from Capture One or Lightroom. So that's a wrap for today's tutorial. Like, subscribe to help others find this content, and I'll see you in the next one.